Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's My Journey webinar, The Roadmap to Success, Preparing Early for Your Best College Experience. My name is Nicole Wolf, and I'm your host for this evening. On behalf of everyone here at ACT, thank you so much for joining us. I am beyond excited to be joined by our incredible expert speakers tonight from Collegewise. But before I turn things over to them, I want to cover some essentials to help you enhance your viewing experience for tonight's live event. First, you see a lot of widgets and tools on your screen. They're in every which direction around what is probably the video of me right in the center. You are in control of all of those widgets and tools, even the video part. They're resizable, they're movable, so please feel free to move them around, resize them to get the most out of your screen space, depending on the device you're viewing this webinar on. A copy of the slides that our presenters will be going through is in the resources tool, as well as some other handy items to accompany this presentation and for you to reference long after it's over. This webinar is being recorded, and it's going to be sent to the email address you registered with in about 1 to 2 weeks. Also, for the best viewing experience, I'm sure we all know by now that webinars eat up a lot of internet bandwidth. So using a high-speed and stable internet connection, close any programs, browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues will give you your best optimum experience. So that means no streaming devices, no other tabs open. Trust me, it will help a ton. If you find that everything is still lagging or the sound stops working, you can try refreshing your screen. And you can also try a hard refresh, which is pressing Control F5 on your keyboard. If you're struggling with anything throughout the webinar, please check out the help tool at the bottom of your screen. And finally, if you need a refresher on any of this information I've mentioned here, there's a handy dandy little, what we like to call a housekeeping slide right underneath the media player. So be sure to refer back to those tips, especially if your video or audio cut out at any time. That slide is going to remain visible throughout the entire presentation. Okay, I'm ready. I hope you all are ready too. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to my friends at Collegewise so that they can share their expert tips and get you ready for the college experience.
Nicole and the full team at the ACT, thank you so much for this warm welcome. We're so excited to dive in. We're going to be talking about how you can best prepare to make the most out of your college experience. I'm going to introduce Collegewise and who I am and the other speakers. But first, we want to know a little bit about you so we can really tailor a lot of what we're talking about. So I'm going to be launching 2 polls right now. The first one, we want to hear about you. So we're asking, are you a parent or guardian, a student, a parent, guardian, and student together, perhaps over the dinner table, or a counselor and educator? So please press the answer and then make sure you hit the submit button as well. And then we are going to be sharing the answers. It looks like about 14% of people have submitted so far. So I'm going to give it another 10 seconds or so before we switch over and see if we can get those numbers up. I'm curious to see who's joined us. All right, so a lot is trickling in. Let's give this 5 more seconds. Okay, perfect. So it looks like we've got a lot of parent and guardians and also a lot of students. And then welcome as well to everyone who is a counselor or educator. One more question for you. We want to know what year you're going to graduate if you're a student or if you're a parent, guardian, or counselor, the students you're working with. So 2024, so a senior going off to college right now, perhaps a rising senior. Again, go ahead and click the best answer here and then hit submit. And once we've got a good number of people who have submitted, I'm going to go ahead and show the results of who's here. If you are a counselor or educator and you work with multiple years as the population, you can certainly put whichever group that you have the biggest numbers of, or who you're really here for too? Okay, I'm going to give this 10 more seconds. It looks like we've got a lot more people submitting now. Okay, let's see. So it's mostly our juniors who are going to be rising seniors, class of 2025. That makes sense. You're probably thinking the most about how to maximize getting ready for college because it's quite close for you. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and introduce who we are. So Collegewise, I'm going to start with our mission. So we have a very strong philosophy on wanting to be the most trusted source of information when it comes to all things preparing in high school and deciding on your post-secondary journey, whether that's college or figuring out the right path for you. So what does this mean exactly? We're really a collection of people who find this space very fascinating and have a deep interest in helping high school students navigate this journey. So at Collegewise, we call ourselves Wisers. We do things like research around what's happening in college admissions. We attend conferences. We publish papers. We do a lot of thinking and tracking of what's happening in the admission space so we can go out there and make sure that everyone has a trusted source to turn to, especially when there's so much content out there. So what does this look like? There are really three main ways that we help families. So the first are our free resources. So we have many webinars like this one. We're pretty much every single week, we're running 2 or 3 webinars on different topics. So you can definitely check out our upcoming events. We have ebooks, guides, white papers. We recently issued one around early action and early decision and what exactly that means. So check out our many, many free resources that are out there. The second way that we help families is for those who are looking to work directly with an expert. We do have a lot of offerings of our services, and they can really range around different budgets. But generally, we can work with students in planning out their full high school journey, building their profile, making the decisions around how they want to spend their summer, the classes to take. So we have college counselors here, as well as financial aid experts and tutors as well for academic, test prep, or even building up the skills that you need to really succeed throughout high school and college. And then finally, we do work with a lot of schools and educators. So your schools can provide services directly to students or families more broadly. So if you are an educator, we'll be talking a little bit more about those options too. So you'll see that we actually started in 1999. So this is our 25th year, and we've now helped over 30,000 students, which is pretty incredible. So you can check out more about us. Now I'll introduce a little bit about us as speakers. So I'm the CEO of Collegewise. So my goal is really to make sure that we are holding true to our mission and putting out the best content that we can. This topic is actually very near and dear to me because I had such an incredible college experience myself. I was fortunate to get a full merit scholarship called the Robertson to Duke University. And a lot of the ways that I selected the Robertson program and Duke were around the type of work I did in high school, which was very focused on education and helping high school students. And my experience at university started on a very strong foot because I was able to start with a lot of smaller seminars. So we're going to be talking about the types of things you can really look at when you set foot on campus. But my broader experience has been within the education space and always focused on supporting high school students. I've worked with some of the bigger names like the U.S. Department of Education, and I've been at Collegewise the last 2 years. We're going to be getting a lot of expertise from 2 of our college counselors. So this is Joel, who will be speaking on the second half of the presentation. So Joel actually has a lot of experience as an admissions officer in the UC system. The UC system actually gets the most number of applicants of any universities. So he has a lot of understanding of the college admissions perspective from that time. and now also as a college counselor working directly with families. And then he also has phenomenal experience in actually seeing how students navigate their first year. He was the residential director at UVM, University of Vermont, actually during COVID. So he's going to be sharing some pretty phenomenal tips with you on how you can make sure that you have that strong first year experience. And you'll also be hearing from Sam, another one of our incredible counselors. So she also has very strong admissions experience. So she's worked at Vanderbilt and the University of Michigan. And she is just one of the most detailed, task-oriented people I've ever met. So she's going to be kicking us off and talking through how you can actually find that best fit university for you. Because a lot of making sure you have that successful college experience comes from making sure that you're at the right place to begin with. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Sam.
Thank you so much, Anjali. Hi, everyone. Before we get too deep into the meat of the conversation tonight, like Anjali said, I want to zoom out for just a moment and set the scene for the larger admissions landscape. So some of you might know this. For many of you, I think this will be a surprising and maybe even an intimidating number that there are over 4,000 colleges and universities in this country alone. Now, when I talk to students, especially in our early conversations, and ask them to name or list all the colleges that they've heard of, they might give me 10 or 15, 20, maybe some more. And these are usually schools that they might be familiar with because they're in their backyard, they have that geographic proximity, or these are schools that their parents went to, friends of friends, or they're seeing these schools in the media and the news headlines. And what I think drives some of that stress and anxiety that I hear from families, especially around those schools that they're reading about or hearing about in the media headlines, is that it's impossible to get into college these days. No one's letting anybody in. It's harder, it's more selective everywhere. And that fuels a lot of the frenzy, but I always want to remind students that yes, there are some schools that have become more selective over the years, but those represent a very, very small slice of the larger pie. And in fact, most colleges accept most students who apply. So the selectivity rate that I'm actually more interested in isn't the admit rate of X school or Y school. It's actually the one that you, the student, are in control of. So over 4,000 colleges to choose from, you're going to pare that down to a list of 8 or 10 or maybe a dozen schools that you are hand selecting that have the privilege of getting to know you as a person and as a student through your application. Think about that selectivity, right? And as your counselor, it's really my privilege to be on this journey with you to help introduce you to options that you might not even be aware of right now, and to help kind of parse through those options to ultimately arrive at a list of schools that are going to be a great match for you. So I always like to start conversations with students around the college search by having them have conversations with their families around what I like to call non-negotiables. So start by thinking about the things that you know you absolutely want to have in your college experience, or on the other side, things you know you don't want to be part of that experience. I'll give you a couple examples. I have a student this year who was applying to biomedical engineering majors that had a concentration in tissue and cellular regeneration. Okay, very, very specific. She didn't care where the school was, if it was in a big city in the middle of nowhere, if it was a small liberal arts college or a major research university. She was really zeroed in on that specific academic program, and that dictated her entire search process. I have another student who, for various physical and mental health reasons, needs to stay within about a 90-minute radius of her home, and that really drove her search process. So start to talk about and name those parameters that are going to dictate your initial search process. And once you get beyond those non-negotiables, then you can move into the things that you don't have to have, but might be nice. That could be a club sailing team you want to join, an orchestra that you can be a part of as a non-music major, whatever that might be. I also want to remind students that very rarely, if ever, are you going to find a school that checks every single one of your boxes. I loved my college. I had a great experience. Was it perfect? No, absolutely not. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a great fit for me. More often, what happens is trying on a college is kind of like trying on a pair of jeans for the first time. At least this is my experience. When I pull on a new pair of jeans, it usually feels really stiff, uncomfortable, doesn't quite feel right at first, but after many wears and many washes, it becomes a lot more comfortable and kind of molds to my shape. And that might happen for you. And if it does, not only is that okay, it's a very normal, very typical part of this process. Remember, this is a process of mutual selection, working to find schools that you think are a great fit for you and your unique needs. And I guarantee you, your needs are going to be different from every other student's on this call and in this virtual Zoom room right now. As students build their college list, here are some of the really important things to keep in mind, no matter if you're at the very beginning of your search process or really developing that final list. We talk so much about creating a balanced college list, meaning I want students to have reach schools as well as target and likely schools on that ultimate list. I want you to stretch yourself and really shoot for the moon for those schools that you know you love. I also want you to make sure that you have target and likely options so that at the end of the day, you're going to hear yes more than you're going to hear no. Ultimately, I want you to be able to make a decision. I want you to have options so that college decision isn't being made for you. Again, this comes back to you having ownership of this process. You can absolutely attain a balanced college list with 8 to 12 schools, and I've seen it done in even fewer than that. One of my biggest pieces of advice to students is to start and approach your college search process by being really detail-oriented and taking specific notes about the things that you like or even don't like about a school. So start to write down things like, I'm really excited about taking this class, or here's a student organization I would love to join. The reason that this is a gift to your future self is that months from now, summer, fall of your senior year, many of these colleges are going to ask you supplemental essay questions like, hey, why are you applying to us? Or why are you interested in this major at our campus specifically? So if you've already done that legwork in your college search process, it's actually less time and effort you have to scramble to find as you're writing those essays. You've already done the work of noting specifically the things that you like about a particular school. So think about it as a way of helping your future self. You probably won't start with an initial list of 4,000 schools, but even if it's 40 or 50, I promise you over time, naturally, as you dig into more detailed and thoughtful research, that list is going to narrow down very naturally. I also want to relieve students of this pressure to feel like they have to find this one singular perfect school or a dream school. Like I said, I loved my college, and I think it was a wonderful match for me. But I know that I would have been happy at a number of other schools too. And I promise that there are so many schools that you would be deliriously happy at, that you would thrive at and be successful at. So try to release yourself from that pressure of just finding one singular school. And then I mentioned this earlier on the previous slide, but if affordability and cost is part of your search process and one of those defining parameters, make sure that you have those conversations early, again, as a family, so that you can avoid any unpleasant surprises as you get deeper into that search process. Now, so far I've talked a lot about what a student might be looking for in that college search process. So I'm going to flip it and talk a little bit about what colleges are looking for. So all the factors that you see on the screen right now are part of what we call a holistic admission review, meaning these are all the factors that colleges are looking at within the context of one another to assess you as a student, but more importantly, as a whole person. So in many cases, when you're going to college, you're joining a residential community where you are learning and living alongside other students. So if you were just looked at by your GPA and a test score, those two data points, you could be sorted by an Excel spreadsheet. And to be honest, there would be no reason to have admission counselors. So what Joel and I did before we came to Collegewise, there would be no reason to have admission officers like us. But you are so much more than just that number and just that data point. Certainly the academic foundation of your application is the most important piece. The classes you take, how you challenge yourself, how you perform, and how you demonstrate that intellectual curiosity. But it's not the whole picture. So colleges get to know you as well through the eyes of people who know you really well, like your teachers and counselors who see you almost every single day. They get to know you through your activities, which are a reflection of your values, how you spend your time, as a way to show colleges how you might plug into their communities and where you're going to make your impacts and your contributions. And also through your own essays, how you pull back the curtain and let a college get to know you better and hopefully get to learn something about you that they're not going to learn from another part of your application, right? So all of these pieces are looked at together. Now, what you notice is not on the screen are specific skills like ability to prioritize tasks or ability to meet deadlines or initiative. But I'll tell you, all of those personal skills that you develop without even realizing it manifest themselves in just about every aspect of your application. So for example, I have a student this year who is really passionate about recycling. And his high school didn't have a recycling program, so he actually started it for the very first time. It's not related to his major. He's actually a mechanical engineering student, but this was just a personal kind of value of his. He looked around his community, saw a need, he saw a hole, and he filled it without being asked. And that, to me, demonstrates a lot of initiative and leadership and ability to rally others to his cause. I have another student who wasn't able to fit AP macroeconomics into her school schedule during the year. So she opted to self-study the subject herself outside of school and sat for the AP exam. To me, that demonstrates a lot of time management and resilience and desire to go beyond the confines of what's available to her in the pursuit of discovering and seeking new knowledge, right? So all of the different ways that you kind of shape your character and your personality in and out of the classroom, these are things that make you who you are as a person, a learner, a thinker, and just an overall community member. And it informs how you make connections, the decisions that you make, academic and otherwise, which again are going to help you be even more successful when you get to college. Now, a lot of those skills that I just mentioned, you're probably used to them showing up in your academic work and your school lives, but you might be surprised at the different ways that they can show up even in the college search process. So Collegewise has a really phenomenal success skills program. I've had a lot of students go through it and it has helped them enormously, so I always recommend it. But I talked to my colleague who oversees that success skills program, and these are some of the skills that he said he consistently sees and works on with students. So things like setting goals and deadlines. This is important in any capacity. So certainly when you're studying for tests in school or you have an assignment, homework, you're thinking about that end goal, that big deadline, the date by which it's due, right? But if you only focused on that date and if you saved all of your time and energy for the day before or the day of that deadline, I think you're going to be in some trouble. So I've never pulled an all-nighter in my life. I've had some students who have. They tell me it's really not fun and I don't recommend it because think of the stress that comes from scrambling at the 11th hour to meet a deadline. I promise you, even if you can start and finish and submit an essay on time, doing it the day it's due, it's not going to be your best work. I promise you that. And I also promise you, you're going to be way more stressed than you would have been if you had set those earlier deadlines and made it much easier for yourself. All of that is in service of project management, which is essentially taking bigger goals and breaking them down into smaller, more manageable chunks. So think about this as an example. How many of you have sat down to write an essay for school and you're staring at a blank screen or a blank page, which I'm probably dating myself by saying that, but you're staring at this blank screen and the words just flow from you effortlessly. Maybe that's happened for you. It actually has never happened for me. And I say that as an English major who loves to write. It's still never happened for me. More often than not, what happens is it's a multi-step process of first brainstorming ideas, organizing your thoughts in a document, maybe by theme or subject, then filling it in with your specific details, your key points and evidence, and that will evolve into a coherent essay or an argument, right? It's a multi-stage, multi-step process. So if you chunk out your bigger tasks into smaller bite-sized pieces and you meet those milestones regularly, I think it's going to be more efficient, but it's also going to be less stressful. So whether that's an essay that you're writing for school, if it's an essay that you're writing for your application, or really anything else, being able to see the bigger picture and break it down into those smaller pieces is going to help enormously. Now, something you might not think about being important is understanding your unique learning style. So think about the way that you currently prepare for your tests or your quizzes. You might be someone who takes a lot of notes and then has to recopy your notes over and over again to really internalize that information. This was true of my best friend in college as a psychology major. Or you might be someone who really learns best by recording yourself giving a speech and then playing it back. That's actually how I practiced for a lot of my admission presentations early on in my career. So you might be an auditory learner, a visual learner. You might like to make PowerPoint presentations and express your creativity that way to learn a new concept. Or you might be more prone to color-coded spreadsheets, which is also my personal MO. Whatever that is, when you tap into your unique learning style, whatever helps you internalize information, hold on to it, apply it to other areas, is going to make your academic work, your college-related tasks, and other things so much more efficient. And it's a skill that you have to identify early on in order to be able to keep improving upon it throughout school. All right, so I've talked so much about high school, but now we're going to connect the dots to talk about why this is important in college. So everything we've just talked about, whether you've noticed it or not, shapes who you are as a person, like I said, as a thinker. And the more that you practice and hone these skills in high school, the more successful and more confident you're going to be when you get to college. So once you focus on those specific questions you have, the things that really light you up, and you follow those academic and non-academic sparks, it's going to lead you to a school that is going to be a great fit for your specific needs. So let me connect the dots a little bit more clearly for you now. These skills that you see on your screen are some of my favorite things to talk about, even though students don't always recognize them as specific skills to learn or like muscles to exercise, but they really, really are. So curiosity might show up in high school in an elective class that you choose to take after you've focused on your required classes, of course. Let's say your high school offers a journalism class and you've always been curious about it, don't really know what it is, not sure you're going to be a communications or an English major, but you want to take a risk and try it. Maybe you love it, maybe you decide it's not for you. Either way, it's a really valuable experience. When you get to college, you are going to have hundreds, and I mean hundreds of classes available to you, more choice than you've ever had in picking your classes. So let yourself be open to discovering new things that you didn't even know existed, or taking a chance and a risk and following a curiosity and seeing where it leads you. I took a philosophy class my first semester in college to satisfy a general education requirement, and I had no idea what philosophy was, to be honest. I ended up loving it, and I took a philosophy class every single year after that. So take those risks. You might be really surprised at where they lead you. Time management, like I've said, is so important. Own your schedule, self-regulation, set deadlines, really be kind of disciplined about how you spend your time. Because again, when you get to college, you're going to have a totally new schedule. Right now, many of you are used to being in class, probably from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or so every single day. But when you get to college, you're taking fewer classes during a semester. So you might have days where you have one class or two, or maybe none. So what do you do with your time when you wake up? It's a day you have no classes. How do you spend your time? How do you have the discipline to decide, this is my study time. If I work my day out like this, I'll have time to go to practice later. Really owning your schedule and making sure that you have that time management skill is going to be incredibly, incredibly important. So again, being able to build on that now, especially in your very, very busy packed lives, is going to help you be even more successful when you get to college. Taking initiative in high school could look like raising your hand and coming in early for extra help if you're struggling in a class. This is something that's really important to build now and to get more comfortable with, because when you get to college, it will be challenging, it will be rigorous. It's meant to feel harder than high school in many cases, And I don't want students to feel like they're the only ones who have a question or that they're the only ones who are struggling. I guarantee you in any class you're in, if you have a question or you're not understanding something, I promise there's at least one other person around you who has that same question. There are so many resources and support services to help you be successful in college. And Joel's going to talk more about those in just a moment. The difference is it might take a little bit more self-advocacy and initiative for you to raise your hand and say, hey, I could use a little extra help with this, or to talk to a professor during office hours to go over a tricky subject in class. And I do think it's really important for me to take this moment and say, asking for help is not at all a sign of weakness. It is never something to be ashamed of. I actually think that asking for help is a superpower, and we all need to make sure we're doing it as much as possible, because there are very, very, very few things in life we can be successful at completely on our own. So raise your hand, ask for help, utilize those resources. And again, the more comfortable you get doing that now in your high school community, the easier it will be in college. Stress management is also really important. I know we have a lot of juniors on the call tonight. I'm hearing from a lot of my juniors that this year academically is the toughest they've experienced, not only in their classes, but in their other activities and engagements. And that can be a lot to handle. It's really important that students, I think, maintain and find those things that bring them joy for the pure love of it. I promise those are worthwhile endeavors. I have a student who enjoys planting a community garden in her hometown. I have another student who really loves thrifting clothes. She's just really creative. She sews, she repurposes clothes and wears them. It has nothing to do with her major. It's not a club that she's a part of. It's just a personal kind of passion project, hobby that she loves. It brings her contentment and happiness. And the more that you maintain those things that just bring you joy and find that balance academically and otherwise, I think not only the more successful, you're going to be more successful, you're going to be happier and more fulfilled. And I want you to make sure you're getting enough sleep every night. That is incredibly important. And then the last thing I'll say is communication. It sounds kind of funny when I put it this way, but learning how to talk to an adult is a really important life skill. Right now, I'm talking with my students about reaching out to teachers to ask them to write recommendation letters for the college application. Once you get to college, reaching out to professors and labs where you might want to pursue a research opportunity or an internship one summer. I know that it can feel scary to pick up the phone or even send a cold email to someone you've never met before, but this is a skill we work on, and the more practice you have in high school, the easier and more second nature that will become once you get to college and beyond. So I'm going to kick it over to Joel now to connect the dots even more and talk a little bit more about that critical college transition and how you can be the most successful you can be.
Joel, I think you're on mute. Can't hear you yet. Not yet.
I'm happy to jump in the meantime. I'll take it from here. Joel, if you pop in, feel free to take the mic from me. So with regard to this college transition, a lot of what I've talked about so far still stands. The flexible curriculum, the schedule, having more choice in how you structure your days. And not only that, but really the next 3-4 years of your life. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that independence. And this might be something that you're less familiar with. but is a key part of that college transition. And like I said earlier, you're not the only person who is meeting these circumstances and situations for the very first time. This is new for everyone. And knowing that hopefully can alleviate some of the stress. More independence and academic initiative, that second piece. You have choice and ownership over your academic pathway. So versus in high school where you've been given a very limited kind of set of classes or a specific pathway, you might get to college and realize there's so much more out here that I didn't even know. Feel that flexibility and openness to following those individual academic pathways and really try charting that your own path for yourself.
Let's see if
Joel,
I'm back on now. Can you hear me now?
You're back.
Look at that.
Absolutely can. All right, I'm gonna take my mic off and let you take it from here.
Thanks for being patient, y'all. Just when you rely on Apple technology, it leaves you hanging right in the middle of a webinar. So those pieces that Sam was talking about tonight, y'all, I'm gonna talk about how it connects to those next steps towards higher education, right? And to your college experience. Sam already started diving on some of these. And so these are all lined up with those skills that she was talking about that you can see on the slide previously that we're hoping you're learning during your high school years. But now, as you look ahead to your next steps in college, these are the 5 that I think is how they kind of come to fruition in your college years. But my kind of take for the next 10, 15 minutes is I'm really talking to you seniors. You seniors, you've started to get your college options. You're probably weighing those options and deciding on a school around next month. We know commitment deadlines are all out of whack this year with the delays in the FAFSA and processing financial aid packages. But eventually you're going to choose a school and you're going to figure out where you're starting next fall in your college journey. I'm going to give you pieces of things that you should consider as you make those next steps into this summer, at the start of the fall, the move-in process. And I'm going to show you how those kind of actually come into tangible, practical items. Even if you're not a senior, if you're younger, if you're a parent or guardian to a younger student, a lot of these pieces, I think, are things that you should be integrating into the college research process that Sam was talking a little bit about earlier. So some of those first next steps, seniors, that you're going to experience are these 3 things on the screen. This is what's happening basically starting next month until August, September, whenever your school is starting. The first big piece, seniors, is summer orientation. Orientation is when you're getting invited to your college or university. It's where you're going to learn how to enroll in your classes. Since we're in this post-pandemic world, college and universities hold orientation in a variety of ways. Some schools nowadays are on virtual and webinar platforms like we're doing tonight. They're going to help you virtually over Zoom. Other schools are going to have 2-3 day long orientation sessions where you actually fly to your college or university or go to your college or university's campus and you spend time in the dorms for a couple days. It's kind of like a quick intro to what college life is going to be like. But most importantly, you connect with on-campus counselors who are going to help you enroll in your fall classes. And then other schools integrate orientation into what that last bullet point says, into their welcome week. Basically, it's integrated within the move-in and welcome week process, your first week at your college or university. Be sure to take advantage of orientation. Juniors and younger, you can look up the orientation programs that schools offer and start to identify, hey, what are the orientation programs I would take advantage of if I had applied to this school? That's kind of your best foot forward in terms of the academic front and how you're going to enroll in classes. One of the very important things that I'm going to harp on in the next few slides, though, even though we go to college for the academic experience, we're going for a major or a degree, and it's okay if you're undeclared or undecided. You'll figure out those interests during your 4 years. But even though we go to university for that degree, there's one rule we talk about a lot within the student affairs and student development realm, and that's a lot of where my experience comes from while I was at the University of Vermont. And that rule is called the 80-20 rule, where really only 20% of your time is inside the classroom in college. 80% of it is outside of the classroom. And so these next couple bullet points and all of my next slides are really reinforcing to you seniors, what's the 80%? What's the things you want to fill within that 80% that makes you happy at those college campuses? For my younger students in the audience, those are the things you should integrate in your college research. You should have an academic major discipline in mind, but you should also make sure that you're finding things that university offers that will allow you to feel fulfilled with the skills that you've kind of developed over your years of high school. So one of the first things on the 80% is you're going to be living with someone, and that's going to be connecting with roommates, right? You're going to have a housing assignment. Depending on your college or university, you might be required to live on campus. If you're just deciding to go to your college or university with a high school friend and move in with them, you're still going to have to engage with them in a new way. Maybe you are, going to the same college as your soccer buddy, but you've never lived with him before. And living with someone is a lot different than just seeing them every day at school. So the first thing you can do, especially my seniors, is once you've got your housing assignment, proactively reach out to that new roommate or roommates if you're living in a multi-room complex. Students, honestly, you're better at this than most of us nowadays. You know how to take advantage of social media. You know how to connect on Instagram or Snap or whatever is the newest kind of social media platform, but connect with those folks. You want to have a familiar face that you're ready to connect with and meet with. So when you arrive in your dorm room in the fall, you already know who you're chatting with. You can plan ahead and figure out who's bringing the TV, who's bringing the mini fridge, who's bringing the microwave, who's bringing the posters. But that's going to allow you to start to feel connected to your college or university experience. And that's a good step forward as well. And then that last bullet point, kind of already alluded to it. Universities and colleges across the country are always going to be holding some type of welcome week, an activities fair, sometimes called the club fair. And students, that's really your first chance to start to kind of gain roots at your new college. This is where you're going to, depending on the size of your university, if you're attending a large public research university, typically those schools are going to have club fairs where there's, hundreds of clubs and organizations out. And it'll be on a school's main quad area or in their large gymnasium. And you'll be able to pop around and meet current students who have similar interests to you, or maybe you'll find new interest. Some of you might be, a climber and you want to find the climbing club on campus and go out on, climbing, bouldering weekends out around your state or around your campus. Others of you might want to try something new. Maybe you want to join a comedy improv group or a theater troupe on a campus that you didn't get a lot of exposure to at high school, and you want to take advantage of that in college or university. Those organizations, they can be both on the fun side, social aspects of campus, the way to build community, and they can also be related to your academic experience. I worked at a school where we had a business economics major, but there wasn't a lot of professional development within the academic department. And so there are entrepreneurial groups on campus, an entrepreneurial society, a Shark Tank, kind of fake Shark Tank pseudo club on that campus where students could build that skill set to pursue business outside of just the classroom setting. So take advantage of that. It's how you get roots. It's how you start to build community and start to feel better away from home in your first years in college. Now, a couple of quick things. When you land on campus and you're in your first couple days of class or first weeks of class, there's 3 quick tactics I want to give seniors, and younger students, you'll think about doing this when you head off to college as well. The first is walk around your college, start to identify where your actual classes are before the first day of classes. Depending on the size of your school, you might know exactly where the building is for the class that you have at 8 a.m. on the Monday of the first day of the semester. But some of those buildings are big. So make sure you walk around, find that exact room. I remember my first day at college, I got lost in the building where I was trying to find class, and I walked into class 15 minutes late. Not a great first impression for a baby freshman at UCLA, but I kind of made that next effort with number 2, which is how can you make a best first connection with faculty or with professors. Depending on your university, you might have TAs. They're usually graduate students who are studying in the department that you're taking a class from. But whether it's a TA, whether it's a professor, a part-time faculty, they're all mandated to hold office hours. And so something you should do as a student is attend those office hours. You should make sure you're connecting with your faculty to get to know them, to build a connection with them. Because 1, that might help you out in terms of the academic experience in the class, but 2, you might not know if you connect back later to those folks. When I applied for grad school at the University of Vermont, I had been working professionally in admissions for 5 years, but I needed letters of recommendation from my college years that when I applied to UVM. And I contacted Dr. Steve Peterson, who I had taken 3 classes from when I was back at UCLA. And luckily, Dr. Steve Peterson remembered me because I was one of those students who went to all of his office hours. It didn't matter if I was doing poorly or really well in his classes. I just was showing up because I wanted to connect with him, get to know what he was doing within the field, understand his research, his professional work. And sure enough, I hit him up 5 years after I graduated from the UC, and Dr. Steve Peterson wrote me a letter of rec for UVM. Thanks, Dr. Steve. He's the only person I ever met at UCLA who his email address was, well, actually, I shouldn't give that out publicly. Okay, cool. And then last but not least is self-studying. It's that piece that Sam has told you all to keep in mind if you're in high school. What are those time management skills you're building up to make sure you're studying well, you're performing best in your classes? But that is very true when you come to college or university. Just like I was saying, the 20% rule is that you're only inside the classroom 20% of the time. You might have an intro to biology course that's only Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 10 a.m. But that's not only the only time you should be dedicating thinking about the intro to bio course. You need to be doing that self-studying outside of the class as well. So create a schedule for yourself, build that up, because a lot of colleges and universities, depending on the class, a lot of your course grade could be reflected just on a few exams, on just a couple papers in the class. It's not going to be able to be buffered by what you've experienced in high school with extra homework or extra credit. So participation grades, a lot of that doesn't exist in college. So keep that in mind. You want to build those skills up now to make sure you've got those self-studying skills when you head off to university. 2 more slides for me, and this is a really important one. This is the one I think I'm talking about a lot with my seniors right now as they're deciding where to head to school. Sam talked about making sure to find balance, but the thing I think about is mental health and wellness for students when you head off to college. College is hard, y'all. Doesn't matter where you go. You might be admitted to your dream school, but that transition is still tough, right? Being admitted to a school is not the end game. You still got 4 more years to work hard and get that degree from that college or university. So one of the things I talked about a lot with students when I was working within the residential facilities at UVM was how to combat homesickness, how to make sure you still feel supported and that you have a community when you're in college. That's why I was naming all of those various tools that students can take advantage of to take their best steps when they arrive at a college or university, because you want to make sure that you feel connected to that campus as you transition during a pretty challenging time. We've put a couple tactics up here that students can take advantage of. I'm going to expand on one of them on the next slide. But certainly the farther away you go from home, it's a very important consideration. I'm talking to a couple of those seniors right now where they've been admitted to a great school just a couple hours away from home, and then they've been admitted to one across the country. And we've weighed the pros and cons of, hey, what happens when you're in your first fall of college and you're very far from, you're going out of state, you're a whole plane trip away, and you've got to decide, hey, do I come back for the Thanksgiving holiday for just 4 days before I have to go back to my college and then take finals in 2 weeks? Some students, that's the first decision they got to make when going back home. And so a lot of times as a first year, you might do that because you're missing home. You want to go and connect with your home community, your parents, your guardians, your friends, your siblings. But often the older you get at your college or university, you might make those trips back home less frequently the farther away you go. So keep that in mind. We want you mentally well and healthy when you go and navigate through university. And how you're going to do that is through a variety of resources. We've touched on a couple of these over the course of the presentation, but these are the 4 that really come to mind to me. Academically, you've got to tap into your academic advisors or your counselors at your college or university. Depending on the size of your campus, you might have different counselors for different parts of your academic experience. You might have that college counselor who's in charge of making sure you graduate. You have the minimum amount of graduation units and GPA from your college. You might have a departmental counselor who's in charge of making sure you're completing your major prerequisite coursework and moving along through your degree to make sure you graduate in time. I'm looking at you engineers who often have a lot of graduation requirements for your engineering majors. For a lot of you, you're going to college because you want to make sure to have a job after college. Go to your campus's career center. The career center, their #1 piece of feedback at pretty much any university or college is they wish that they talked to freshmen and sophomores in college instead of the seniors. Usually they're getting the seniors the semester before they graduate saying, hey, I need a job next year, but I haven't had any internships or any professional development. So career center counselors, they definitely want to start to work with those younger kiddos earlier on. We've talked about mental health support services, but those services are growing at a number of college campuses around the country. Know what you need in terms of mental health and support. There's going to be professionals at a majority of those universities, but juniors and younger, include that in part of your research. If you know you're someone who's going to need some resources on campus to navigate the stress of college, be sure to connect with those, make sure that those mental health folks and counselors are available at that university. One of the surprising facts I found out while in grad school is that we often think that the hardest part of the college transition would be stress management, is learning how to study, is taking much more rigorous courses. But the number one thing that we heard students needed in those mental health support services was actually connection, right? Was relationships and making sure they felt a sense of community at the college they were attending. And then last but not least, we've already talked about that a little bit, but student life, right? Just getting connected with peers at that university. You want to find folks with similar interests. You might have new interests that you want to explore, but make sure to connect with student organizations, with academic or clubs that will help you along in your trajectory in terms of the major you're trying to graduate with. But a lot of that, seniors, you can look at your options now. I saw a great question in the chat about, hey, I've got 2 to 3 options. My students considering these, they're all pretty similar. Really dive into those specifics of what the campus offers for what your student needs. And that really reinforces everything that what Sam was talking about at the beginning of this presentation as it relates to college research. All right. Thank you again for the presentation, Snafu. I'm gonna throw it back to Anjali and we're gonna make sure we get to some Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sam and Joel. I've learned so much just listening to you right now. As Joel mentioned, we do have time for some questions and answers, and I see them pouring in right now. Quite a lot of questions are actually a bit more about Collegewise or things that we can help support with. So I'm going to spend 1 minute to wrap up our portion of that, and then I'm going to start feeding questions to Sam and Joel. So if you are interested in learning more about Collegewise, I see questions on what exactly we offer, how we can help, budget questions, all of that. So we do have a lot of options, like I mentioned. So you can work with a dedicated counselor throughout high school, especially if you're a junior, if you're navigating, figuring out that right fit university. Or if there's a certain portion, like the success skills piece, you really want to get better at some of these soft skills that Joel and Sam mentioned. We actually have some smaller programs that'll be tailored to that. So what we're going to do is actually release a poll. And if you're interested in one of those programs, we will reach out to you. Now, I also see a ton of questions that are just about topics that you want to learn more about. If you're a first-generation student, how do you navigate the college application process? How do you find the right fit university? How do you approach financial aid? These are all a lot of topics that we have covered through our resources. So I highly encourage you to check out our website and our upcoming events in particular. We actually have one that's going to be later this week on selecting your major in college. I see a lot of questions about that. So you can see what's there. Of course, there's a lot of stats about us at the bottom here. The one I'm most proud of is that 9 out of 10 of our families go on to refer us. So we're very grateful for that. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll. So the first question, if you are interested in having us contact you, go ahead and select A. And then one of our team members will contact you and talk about the program options. They all depend on what year you are, what you're looking for. So they'll chat with you about it. B, you might not be sure yet, but you want to understand a bit more about Collegewise and get information. C, you want to just check out the free resources. You can click that and we'll send you a couple of links. And then D, if you are a counselor or educator and you want to hear about how we support schools and families that way, you can select that. And we also have many, many resources for school counselors. And just a reminder again, you're going to need to hit submit once you're done with this poll. And then afterwards, we're going to be in touch. I see our most popular question is actually if this session was recorded. And it absolutely was. And the recording will be ready in 1 to 2 weeks. So you can keep an eye out on your inbox for that. So I'm going to leave this poll up for another 30 seconds. But I am going to start teeing up our very first question. It looks like there's so many more pouring in right now. Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. I'll give it 10 more seconds. Perfect. And then if you were very, very much urgently wanting to chat with us, there is a QR code. You can get in touch with us earlier that way too. So Sam and Joel, my first question to you is, when should you start learning some of these skills that you talked about, like project management? Is there a specific age you should start studying it, or is it something you just keep growing with?
That's a really, really great question. I don't think that there's a specific age by which you have to start, but to answer the second part of your question, I do think it is a lifelong kind of commitment to learning and growing, that you probably never feel like you arrive at the point where you can check the box and say, okay, like I'm done, I have initiative, right? These are things that we all work on consistently. But I do think that there are a lot of other kind of smaller, lower stakes places where you can practice some of these skills before you get even to later on in high school and eventually to college. So with project management, setting deadlines, it can be something like if you are a violin player and you're practicing for an upcoming performance, maybe you kind of work your way backwards with setting deadlines for how many times you want to practice every day or week, or certain sections of a piece you're working on that you want to master before you go on to build on the next section and what comes after that. So basically any task, breaking that down into smaller pieces, whether it's academic or non-academic, setting deadlines, and it could be for fun stuff too. It could be setting a reading goal for yourself. Like this summer, I want to read 5 books by the same author, or I want to read this 700-page book. So I'm going to set smaller goals to read X, amount every day or week. So start with smaller tasks. They can be personal hobbies. And then the more you practice them over time, the more it will just become second nature to you, and that'll be your instinct.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's sort of when someone starts talking to you about these skills, you start to see opportunities to flex them. So it's such an ongoing journey. Okay, we have a lot of questions around how you should prepare in high school for college, and then when you should actually start exploring colleges. So Joel, do you want to take first pass at this one? It's a big question.
Yeah, I'll give it a whirl. And I gotta name, like, most of the students I work with, they're a lot of like Southern California boys. So this might seem silly, but really one of the things that we actually heard from our success skills folks at Collegewise was to really start with the little things. Sam and I are giving you a lot of big idea pieces today of how you can become a better time manager, how you can start to advocate for yourself. But for a lot of you on the call, for you younger students, I want you to look at your backpack, your school backpack, if you see it over there across the room right now. And if it's a mess, if you don't have your papers organized or your homework organized in different types of folders, let's start with the basics. Let's do step 1, right? So Anjali, you asked about how to build those skills up over time. It always starts with the small things first, right? Starting to create a small routine of, hey, if I organize my backpack, I organize how I organize my homework and my assignments and what I'm going to study for. That's going to have high payoffs as you move through classes in high school. So I think a lot about the academic piece for my high school students. If you can connect with your teachers, those, and make sure you're building solid relationships with them, showing up to class well. I know you probably get assigned seats depending at the high school you're at, but making sure that you're paying attention in class, that's going to matter for later, because eventually you're going to need teacher recommendations and you're going to need to ask those folks to write about the ways that you show up in class. So there are some pieces in terms of building that skill set. Anjali, the second part of your question, and I'm seeing a lot of it in the chat, is refining a college list, right? I want to reiterate what Sam was mentioning. Lots of colleges and universities are going to offer very similar experiences, y'all. One of the things I tell students, I work with some students in the Pacific Northwest, and they go visit colleges, right? They get a chance to go visit schools, maybe outside state. And if they do a trip down to Southern California, I don't want those students to go and visit 4 UC campuses. Even though that's where I worked and I love the UC system, I don't want them to go visit just UCLA, Irvine, San Diego, and Santa Barbara. That's going to give you the same idea of a large public research institution. Sure, you could argue each of those UCs have different styles and feels and environment, but really what I want students to go do is visit different types of campuses. So you don't have to travel far to see colleges, y'all. You can usually find them in your backyard. And so if you're in Southern California, just as the example, that's a place I know well, you should go visit, sure, one UC campus, and then go visit a Cal State University, another public institution, but not as research driven. Then go visit a small private school like an Occidental in East Los Angeles, and then maybe a parochial school like Loyola Marymount University. Visiting different types of colleges will start to allow you students to go, hey, where do I see myself for those 4 years? Do I see myself at a massive school at a big UC with 30,000 students where I've got to really advocate for myself and I can kind of be a number at that campus? Or would I rather go to a Chapman University? That's, spans a few blocks wide, but I see familiar faces every day on my walk to class. So there's many ways to do that and refine that list. But the first is really, I think, taking those steps on a college campus, trying to see if you can see yourself first.
Perfect. And I think you actually answered several other questions with that as people are thinking about how to narrow down their school list. Certainly visiting or exploring more helps you really think through it. We're going to do just one last question. So some questions on what are good extracurriculars or extracurriculars that look good on college applications. This is actually one I'm super passionate about, so I'll go ahead and answer. There is no right extracurricular. It's what's right for you. So a lot of what we encourage with our students is self-reflecting on the types of activities that you enjoy, the types of skills you want to build, or ones that you're really proud of that you have, and see how you can explore that more. So colleges actually, we have so many former admissions officers here at Collegewise, and there is no right secret sauce. What they're looking for is a student who's engaging with the world around them in a way that feels very genuine and exploring their interests. They're trying to make an impact on their community, and community can be a lot of different things. So I'd say be rest assured that there is no right path that you need to follow, so you can really explore what you are most interested in. And follow that throughout high school. Now, there's certainly things you can do to showcase commitment to an extracurricular. You can spend more time on it. The main portal through which you'll apply the Common App, it'll ask how long you've been involved with an activity. Is it all the way through high school? How many hours per week? Do you have leadership within any of those clubs? So there are things that'll indicate that you've given a lot to it. But again, you don't need to have, one art, one athletic, one music, anything like that you need to exactly follow. Perfect. With that, I am going to pass it back to Nicole from the ACT.
Thank you so much, Anjali. And I just want to give a huge thank you to Collegewise, to you, to Sam, to Joel. This information that you all shared tonight, it's just truly valuable and foundational for a successful college experience. I'm a first-generation college student. I wish I would have had a presentation like this when I was going through my college journey. So really thank you for being here to help support everyone on the webinar with us this evening, and as many will watch the recording at a later date. Before we say goodbye, I just have a few last items to wrap us up. Don't forget about the resources tool on your screen. If you closed or minimized, be sure to bring it back up. There's a copy of the slides and some amazing exclusive resources from ACT and from Collegewise. And last thing, when the webinar ends, there's going to be a survey that pops up on your screen. We would be so thankful if you just took 5 minutes to fill out the questions. And that's just so we know that we are serving y'all as you are attending these webinars and bringing the best information and events that we can bring to you to make sure that we continue to serve you and to help serve those that serve students. So thank you again so much on behalf of ACT. Hope you enjoyed the event, and we will see you in the fall. Bye, everybody. Thank you.